Hey friends, tonight I'm going to tell you a true crime story. Gently, and you're going to be right there in it, walking the same quiet streets, hearing the same crickets, stitch the dark together. The case is cold to the touch, but not dead. It breathes in drafts and dusty files, and you can feel it move when you lean close. So before you get cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And if you don't mind, drop your city and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're listening from. Now, turn off the lights, flip on a fan for that soft whir, and let's begin tonight's journey together. You step out onto the small town sidewalk as the night folds itself around you like a wool blanket. It smells faintly of cut grass and damp newspaper ink from the corner stand. The courthouse clock, half a block away, gives a reluctant click, one gear nudging another before deciding it's not in the mood to chime. That's how Riverbridge is. Unassuming, a little sluggish after dark, a place that holds its breath and waits for morning. But it wasn't always waiting. There was a night, long ago, when the town exhaled too fast, and what rushed out never quite returned. You start at the library, because everyone does. It's a low brick building with a shabby pride, a civic mural on the side wall, and a row of metal letters that say Public Library, but keep losing the letter I to wind and bored teenagers. Your fingers trail the cool handrail as you climb the steps, and behind the glass doors you see stacks that look like upright gravestones, narrow aisles like alleys in a quiet city. Librarians say books remember. In Riverbridge, the library remembers. For everyone. It remembers the Thursday when the rain stopped early and a breeze pushed maple leaves into the foyer. It remembers the sound of a study chair sliding back. It remembers you, or someone close enough to you to make the moment feel like a borrowed coat. Her name was Cara Lyle, and even if you never met her, you know the type. Part-time at circulation, full-time at keeping the world tidy. She lived 2 streets away in a yellow rental with a crooked porch light and a cat that slept like an old man, loudly and without apology. That Thursday, Cara covered the evening shift, a calm piece of routine. Closing was at 9. At 8:23 p.m., the computer log shows a return, a paperback on the Blitz with a coffee ring on page 117. At 8:41, the alarm panel registers a test chirp. At 8:57, a patron leaves through the front door, the air handler sighs, and the clock over the desk hiccups from 8:59 to a stubborn 8:59, then stops. When the morning crew arrived, the front door was locked from the inside, and Cara was gone. You cross the lobby carpet, every step making a soft rasp, and you picture the last half hour replaying in a loop. The smell of toner, the thin hum of fluorescent lights, and the distant burble of the ice machine on a timer that has never learned the seasons. A book cart sits with its wheels turned out like toes, a pencil rolled under the desk, where it still lies. The town tells itself it doesn't believe in ghosts, but Riverbridge believes in Cara. The absence of her has the weight of furniture. Here's a truth you can clutch in your fist. By 1986, forensic DNA had proved itself in a double murder case in England, when Alec Jeffrey's profiling method cleared one man and identified another. That's real, a hinge that swung open 1,000 doors. But Riverbridge wasn't ready for DNA. Not then. Evidence bags, sure. Chain of custody, sure. But small towns move on the timetable of habit, and in the weeks after Cara went missing, the routine wrapped its arms around the town like a shawl. The fall festival still went up on Main, with string lights and the smell of fried apples. And the library reopened after 3 days because people needed to print things, and overdue fees can't forgive themselves. You pause at the reference desk, where the grain of the varnished wood rises under your touch, like a topographical map. There's a scratch shaped like a crescent moon, and you can imagine a ring catching, a hand turning, and some small startled gesture carving permanent surprise into furniture. To your left, a bulletin board still hosts the kind of flyers that are always half out of date. Babysitting, yoga above the hardware store, and a yard sale that keeps getting postponed by rain and then by life. One of the thumbtacks is a star, bright brass against cork, and when you press it with your nail, it gives, as if whatever held it firm has loosened with time. In Riverbridge, stories breed in the places where nothing seems to happen. There's the detail that everyone swears by, that the wall clock over the desk froze at 8:59, exactly the second hand quivering over the 9. People say it's an omen. People say it's irony. What you notice is quieter. The clock runs on a battery. Nothing special. A D-cell from the drugstore. And the back plate is missing a screw. Any shrug from the universe could have stopped it. But the clerk at the drugstore remembers this is one of those weird edges that a man came in 2 days earlier and bought a single D-cell and a pack of cinnamon gum and asked, "This'll last a while, right?" That's the sort of thing towns remember, not meaning, just texture. You pass into the stacks, where the light goes greenish and the paper smell is warm with glue and dust. You can feel your shirt lift and settle as the air system cycles. A book half pulled from a shelf sits like a held breath. You slide it back with 2 fingers. There's a hush here that makes you listen harder to the things that don't make sound. The portrait of a founder whose eyes seem to follow. The bored absence in the fire extinguisher's gaze. And then, in the geography section, where no one ever goes, you find the old checkout ledger in a box labeled "Do Not Discard," because this town discards nothing without talking to itself for a few years first. You open the cover and the paper whispers, and there, in neat rectangular stamps, is a name that returns in concentric circles. P. Halvorsen. The name stops, starts, and stops, like a heartbeat that learned to stagger. What happened that night? You walk it like a route you used to take home. The janitor clocked out at 8:15. His alibi is his daughter's school performance, a 4th-grade recorder concert that left a whistle in his ears for a day and a half. The patron at 8:57 says he waved at the desk and thought Kara waved back, but he also admits he was juggling an umbrella and 2 CDs and, life. A deputy cruised past at 9:05 and saw nothing strange, but he was on the phone about a sick parent, and you've been on those calls. You could drive through a parade and miss the clowns. What's left are oddities. Star-shaped thumbtacks, cinnamon gum, the way the floor near the back door squeaks in F-sharp, and the fact that the back door wasn't locked, but the security bar was down. A contradiction that holds the shape of a person. You exit through that back door in your mind, stepping into the narrow service alley where the dumpster breathes out a sweet sour air and moths throw themselves against the utility light. Your foot scuffs a line of pebbles. Beyond the chain-link fence is the municipal lot where 5 cars slept that night, including a sedan with sun-faded paint and a bumper sticker for a gym that closed in 2009. You put your palm on the fence, and it gives a little, like a wry smile. Somewhere, a dog barks 3 times, then thinks better of it. If Kara came this way, if someone walked alongside her, they left footprints no one noticed, because the ground is bad at holding guilt. Mud is forgiving. Concrete is indifferent. Grass forgets you a minute after you pass. You circle back to the wider town, the storefronts with their sleeping mannequins, and the diner with a red neon sign that says open whenever the owner remembers to turn it on. In the far booth of that diner, over pie and coffee, the townspeople decided on a theory one night and then on a kinder one the next. In the years since, they've kept both theories folded in a drawer, because what a community really wants is a version of events that lets it continue to bump into itself without flinching. Somewhere between those 2 folded papers is a debate that never yields. How reliable is memory after we've told it to ourselves too many times? Do eyewitnesses recount or rewrite? Academics argue this over journal pages. In Riverbridge, they argue it over cinnamon rolls. You keep walking, as if distance could coax truth out of hiding, and you pass the high school, where the class photo from Kara's year sits crooked in a glass case, everyone strange and young. At the far edge of town, the river moves like a sleeping thing, turning once around the bend and then vanishing under a bridge that hums when trucks hit the expansion joints. Water keeps its own counsel. The night wants to as well. Somewhere, a screen door creaks, and you catch the faint metallic tap of a flag's clip against a pole. Before you turn back, you lay one more fact on the table. Something small enough to seem trivial. On that last day, someone signed the guest book in the local history room with a fountain pen whose ink bled slightly into the paper. They wrote their name P. Halvorsen, and then, under purpose of visit, they wrote, checking endings. Is that poetry? Is that a joke? Is that a confession in a pocket-sized disguise? You're back at the library steps now. The brick dark with a thin skin of moisture, the night folding tighter as if to make sure the day can't peak. You can hear the fan you left running at home, a steady, friendly hush, as if the town has synced its breathing to yours. You put your hand on the door and feel the faint vibration from inside, some machine doing what it was told. That's the thing about Riverbridge. It still does what it was told, most of the time. But on that Thursday, someone broke the rhythm. If you press your ear to the glass, you can almost hear the leftover echo of 8:59, a second hand going nowhere, and a breath held to this day. And because every story deserves a sliver of hope to hang a coat on, the rumor that drifts through Riverbridge these days is a new one. It says, evidence that was once too ordinary to be noticed has been woken up by modern eyes. It says, someone asked for the old ledger by name. It says an arrest has been made, and the man who bought cinnamon gum has a new, stunned stillness to him, like a clock that realizes it's been watched. Whether that's hothouse gossip or the first real warmth after a long frost, you can't yet tell. You only know that you're part of the town now, standing at the threshold with the old keys and a question that clicks like teeth. What exactly happened at 8:59? You stand at the edge of morning like someone who has stayed too long at a party and now hears the hosts washing dishes. Riverbridge yawns. The fan back home still purrs in your mind. That soft whitewash, while the town switches on its neon and its habits. You move with it, coffee, sidewalk, the thin blue of pre-dawn, and you aim your steps toward the county building, because that's where people who want answers end up pretending to read notices on a corkboard. Your reflection doubles in the glass, and for a beat, you're two people, the one who still hopes the past is negotiable, and the one who knows it doesn't bargain. Inside, you ask for the records clerk, the same way you'd ask for sugar at the diner. Everyone knows her, Marlene, with hair like carefully folded tissue paper and a lanyard crowded with pins that announce conferences and causes and once, briefly, a bowling team. She recognizes you as the person who's been haunting the library at off hours in the municipal lot like you're counting the spaces. If it's FOIA, there's a form, she says, already sliding a clipboard across the counter. You write while she talks. Your name, your request, your best approximation of patience. The pen scratches. Somewhere in the building, a copy machine starts up with a cough and a faint ozone smell. And you think about how bureaucracies are just machines that breathe paper. You ask for what's public. Incident reports, the original missing person file, and anything logged between 8:30 and 9:30 that Thursday. You phrase it plainly, careful not to sound like a mystery podcast with swelling strings. Marlene nods, stamps the pages with a rubber thunk that feels more official than ink should feel, and tells you 3 business days. You thank her anyway. As you turn, she calls after you, not unkindly. A lot of people tried to solve this, she says. Most of them got angry or tired. You know what she means. Anger burns, tiredness erodes. You tell her you're aiming for neither. She shrugs, which in Riverbridge means, be my guest, but bring the form back on time. You detour to the diner, where the coffee tastes like ambition and the pie tastes like compromise. The booth vinyl is cool through your shirt. In the corner, the television is doing its morning show smile with its morning show teeth. Over the hum of conversation, you hear the hum of gossip, shifting gears, and then the words settle, arrest, old case, book ledgers, that gum. The cashier lowers her voice because lowering your voice adds truth, and says the sheriff's office picked up someone last night. A name swirls into the room and out again. Halvorsen. The syllables feel like a hinge that hasn't been used in a while. You leave a tip the size of a thank you and step into the kind of morning that makes all crimes look implausible. The sky is too clean. The river shines like someone polished it. You walk faster now, toward the sheriff's lot, past the line of cars with their sunburned dashboards and their little fabric air fresheners shaped like trees. The building itself is square-shouldered and tired, its stones remembering hands that placed them. Inside, you do not ask for gossip. You ask if there's a press release. You ask it as a citizen, not as a sleuth. That matters. The deputy at the desk points toward a stand of pamphlets and a whiteboard where someone with neat handwriting has promised an update at noon. You study the whiteboard like it's a painting, and you're trying to see the brushwork. Noon is far away. You go back to the clock in your head. 8:59. A battery. A missing screw. In the hallway, you pass an evidence room door with a magnet that says, "Do not prop open." You imagine boxes inside, zippered bags, and tape with case numbers marching in black up their sides. Somewhere in there, a D-cell battery from a drugstore. Somewhere, a ledger page kissed by fountain pen ink. Maybe this is wishful thinking. Maybe it's a town's daydream ripening into something like an announcement. But you feel it, the air thickening around an answer. You spend the morning walking Riverbridge's perimeter, like you're checking to see if any fence boards have warped. You count the lampposts that hum audibly, the 2 dogs that bark at you as if the past is your fault, and the 1 shoe tied over a power line that no one ever claims. You rehearse, silently, what noon might bring. An arrest isn't a conviction. It's a statement that says, "We think we can tell you a story now, and we think it will hold up to questions." You know this because you have spent late nights reading about how stories collapse. You remember a piece about the Innocence Project, about how post-conviction DNA testing has exonerated hundreds of people since the 1,990 seconds, a fact that is both heartening and devastating. It reminds you that truth can be found, and also that truth is sometimes belated, and you carry that dual feeling like a coin. Hope on one side, humility on the other. True thing, since truth helps anchor your breath. In 1998, the FBI rolled out CODIS nationwide, a searchable DNA database that let labs compare unknown profiles to known offenders with a speed that used to be fantasy. That's not rumor, that's scaffolding. It means a swab taken from an object in a small-town library could, in theory, speak to a national audience and hear an answer. But you also hear the counter-melody, the base rate fallacy, the misreading of probabilities. The academic debate about cold-hit statistics, how juries and even experts sometimes drift between match and meaning. You tuck that in your pocket too, a reminder to look at the math with the same squint you use for memories. Noon arrives. The room they use for press is really just the community room. The same one where the garden club sets up its seed exchange every April with tables of envelopes labeled in careful handwriting. Beefsteak, Brandywine, mortgage lifter. Today, the tables have microphones on them and a bank of local cameras pointed at the sheriff like he's a nervous plant about to bloom. You stand at the back with the other people who are not press, but who are thorough. The sheriff clears his throat, says good morning, says thank you for your patience, and says words you've heard in other cases, but that feel new when spoken here. An arrest has been made in connection with the 20. No, he corrects himself. The 1,980 seconds disappearance of Carlisle. The man's name is Peter Halvorsen. He is a resident of Riverbridge. He is 61. He was taken into custody without incident. The phrase, "without incident," floats on the air like dust in a projector beam. Details come in careful handfuls. A re-examination of physical evidence. Modern testing. An item recovered from the back door area. A latent print with enough ridge detail to be meaningful when paired with other indicators. Digital enhancements of the old building's camera, the one people used to say never worked, yielding partial timing data, corroborating a presence. You listen for DNA. and hear it finally, mentioned not as a magic word but as one piece among others. You hear about the ledger, how the fountain pen left micro-traces that co-signed the entry with the writer's hand oils. You hear about the gum, the way cinnamon oil can preserve epithelial cells better than peppermint, and a weird little entomologist type, aside from the lab tech that made everyone laugh and then stop laughing. You watch the room learn, in real time, that nothing is trivial if time is patient. Questions get asked, some good, some theatrical. Someone wants to know the motive, as if the sheriff keeps those in a drawer next to pens. Someone else asks if Kara is, if there is, if remains have been found. The sheriff's voice turns sympathetic and immovable at once. This is a step. This is not a destination. He says they're coordinating with the district attorney and that more information will be released when doing so won't compromise the case. He says the family has been notified. He says thank you again, like gratitude could sand down the corners of grief. You step outside into light that makes you squint, not just from brightness, but from the way it redraws edges you thought you knew. The town begins to rearrange itself around the news. The diner invents a special called the Cinnamon Roll of Justice because small towns metabolize shock with food. Someone tapes a paper heart to the library door. At the hardware store, the owner tells the first customer in line that he always thought it was an outsider, and the customer says he always thought it was someone we know. Both are rewriting the past to put themselves on the clever side. You understand. Everyone wants to have been right, especially when they were wrong. You go to the library because the story insists you do. The air inside is cooler than outside, as if the building is keeping its temperature and its temper. The desk clock has been replaced since then. It keeps flawless time now and clicks in a self-satisfied way. You run your finger over the crescent scratch and feel the same stutter of wood grain. In the local history room, a volunteer straightens the guest book like flowers on a grave. "We're not gossiping," she says, and then gossips anyway, softly, the way people recite recipes. She tells you Halvorsen volunteered here once for the tax prep kiosk, back when community service hours were a thing you could list on resumes and feel the halo. He shelved periodicals with a reverence that read as piety and might have been staging. You walk the geography aisle, the greenish one, where the paper smell is warmest, and you notice what you didn't before. One shelf, where the books sit half an inch forward, a subtle, uniform jut like someone used it to brace a lazy hip. You press the spines back, and they whisper in a chorus. Your fingertips come away dusty, the gray of many patient Thursdays. There's a weight in your chest that is not dread, exactly, but the heaviness of seeing a shape in the fog and having it not go away when you blink. Outside, on the library steps, a reporter asks you how you feel, not because you are important, but because you are here, and the camera needs a face. You say you feel relief and something like sorrow stuffed into the same pocket. You say you hope this gives the family what they need. You do not say that you want it to give the town what it thinks it deserves, because you know towns don't deserve. They just are. Afternoon stretches. The press truck leaves. The sheriff's whiteboard gets erased with a squeak that feels like the end of a chapter. You wander toward the river again because water softens the edges of hard thoughts. You stand on the pedestrian bridge where the expansion joints sing under tires, and you let the song be what it is, regular and innocently mechanical. On the far bank, a kid on a bike rides the narrow curb like a tightrope, and you hold your breath without meaning to. He makes it. He always does. And you exhale. The town is still good at some things. You think about the arrest, like it's a book you've been reading for years and that, at last, turned a page without tearing. You think about how the FBI's CODIS didn't exist when Kara disappeared. How Alec Jeffrey's first DNA case had just rippled across newspapers. And how Miranda warnings, another slab of legal history, were barely 2 decades old back then and still felt new in small-town booking rooms. You think about how systems grow up, how tools sharpen, and how people who seemed untouchable get gently ushered toward the bench anyway. And you think about the academic quarrel that will hiss at the edges of this case. The uncertainty in partial prints, the probabilistic genotyping, and the debate over whether a ledger touch is a handshake or a coincidence. You promise yourself to keep your ears open and your mind slightly bowed, the way you stand near a river to hear it better. Then comes the call you weren't expecting, but should have been. Marlene from Records, her voice both pleased and annoyed, tells you your request is ready early because they were looking at the boxes anyway. You thank her like she just saved your favorite chair from the curb. In her office, she slides a folder across the desk with the caution of a person who has watched paper start fights. Inside are copies, the original reports, a list of items collected, a sketch of the building, and notes from interviews that read like the first draft of a noon press conference you've already heard. There's a line that catches your eye. A weirdness you can't file under coincidence. A note about a janitorial supply order from the week before. An extra box of nitrile gloves, unusual at the time, signed for by P. Halverson. The penmanship is neat, the H like a fence with two posts. You carry the folder like contraband and like a hot cup of tea at once. Outside, you sit on a bench and turn pages with care, as if the paper could bruise. You assemble the timeline like a child's puzzle where most of the sky pieces are the same shade of blue. 8:23. A return. 8:41. A test chirp. At 8:57, a patron waves. At 9:05, a cruiser rolls by with a distracted deputy on a phone call. Somewhere in there, the back door. Somewhere, the ledger. Somewhere, a man with cinnamon on his breath and gloves in his pocket, who once asked if a D-cell lasts a while. You look up, and the light has shifted from noon to the kind of afternoon that makes windows a little more honest. In their reflection, you see yourself, and behind you, Riverbridge rethreading its daily life around a question mark that might finally be a period. You think of Kara, a person, not a symbol, and you wish her the dignity of a story that doesn't keep changing its mind. The fan back home will be waiting to bring you down from this ledge of attention. But for now, the town holds you as if you were a book someone left open on a table and promised to come back to soon. You believe them. You sit with the folder, and you listen to the quiet as if it might confess. Evening slides in quietly, like a polite guest who doesn't want to interrupt your thoughts. The street lamps hum again, the same note, the same rhythm, and you realize how little and how much has changed. Riverbridge still smells of cut grass and old paper, but there's something under it now. Relief mixed with disbelief. The scent of a storm that passed but left its shape in the air. You walk toward home, that familiar path where the pavement cracks into small mosaics, and you think about how the truth, when it finally shows up, never arrives as one solid thing. It drips, it seeps, and it blends with memory, until both are hard to separate. You stop by the convenience store. The clerk, a different kid now, probably not even born when Kara vanished, hands you a bottle of water and says, "Crazy about that arrest, huh?" You nod. He doesn't need your opinion. He needs the small talk to confirm he's living through a moment people will remember. Outside, the sky has that late-hour violet, where clouds look heavy with secrets. You walk slowly, and your shadow stretches long ahead of you, a version of yourself that seems to know where it's going. Back at the library, the lights are still on in the back office. Through the window, you see a figure moving, a custodian perhaps, or one of the archivists sorting through boxes. You hesitate, thinking how strange it is that the scene looks so ordinary now. You cross the grass and rest your hand on the window frame. The glass feels cool, but not cold. Inside, papers rustle. Outside, a moth flutters like a small heartbeat against the pane. For a second, you imagine Kara standing here too, brushing that same bit of air. The thought doesn't frighten you. It feels like completion. You remember something you read maybe in a history article about criminology, that in 1984, the first DNA-based conviction in the U.S. hadn't yet happened. Investigators still relied on blood types, shoe impressions, and hunches seasoned by long nights. The science was coming, but slowly, one discovery at a time. It makes you wonder if the past ever truly ends, or if it just waits for technology to catch up with conscience. The academics debate this endlessly. Is progress in justice a line or a loop? You smile, because in Riverbridge, that question would start an argument that would last until the coffee ran out. The sheriff's office releases a small update the next day. The arrest has led to additional evidence. Personal belongings recovered from a crawl space under an outbuilding behind Halverson's property. The news spreads like pollen, soft, drifting, unavoidable. The diner, the hardware store, and the church bulletin board each adds its layer of speculation. But you, who have followed the path step by step, feel an unexpected calm. You've seen how long a story can hide and how quietly it can surface. There's a kind of mercy in the slowness. That night, the town gathers on the courthouse lawn. Candles, murmured prayers, the flutter of wax catching wind. You stand near the back, not wanting to disturb the intimacy of grief that finally has a face. Someone reads a poem, something about river stones and time, and the crowd repeats the last line together. We remember you in light. You glance at the clock tower. Its hands move easily now, without hesitation. The sound is faint, but steady, and it makes you feel that maybe time, at last, has forgiven Riverbridge. Later, you sit on your porch. The air hums with cicadas, and the moon hangs like a silver coin just out of reach. You open the folder one last time, letting the papers breathe. There are still unanswered lines, and still theories that don't quite line up. But the weight of mystery has softened. What was once jagged now feels round, worn smooth by attention. You lean back, close your eyes, and picture the library bathed in gentle lamplight, the clock ticking forward, and the world doing its quiet best to keep moving. You think of Kara not as a missing person, but as a presence restored, her story reclaimed, her name spoken. And you think of Halvorsen, sitting somewhere sterile, maybe realizing the silence he built has finally been broken. You don't feel anger. You feel gravity, the kind that keeps every object tethered to the earth, no matter how hard it tries to drift. In the coming weeks, the trial will unfold. The papers will print retrospectives, and the academic circles will start their postmortems, debating evidence thresholds, contamination probabilities, and witness reliability. You'll read some of it, skim most of it, but one evening, you'll stop, because there's a limit to how long you can chase ghosts before you start becoming one. And Riverbridge, with all its quiet streets and slow forgiveness, deserves to sleep again. So you decide to let the story rest, not because it's finished, but because it's finally tired. You close the folder, exhale, and feel the fan at your bedside begin its familiar hum. Its rhythm merges with the soft breathing of a place that has learned to live with its memories. You let your eyes drift shut, the words and faces fading into the same gentle darkness. Maybe someday we'll know the truth, but for now, sleep well.